The last segment of the show on Tuesdays, and we start off at 24 minutes after 8. Joining me in studio, we have Stevens Muga, and Stevens Muga is from Italian's Kitchen Limited. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sure the name probably gives away a little bit of what you do, but is that all you do, kitchens?
No, not really. Thanks for having me on your show.
Karibu.
Yeah, so we are a design firm, interior design firm. We have now positioned ourselves as one of the premier design houses in the country. And Italian Kitchens is just a name. So the scope of what we really do is way much bigger than that. Our flagship has been, the kitchens, generally joinery for residential projects, so kitchens, wardrobes. But now increasingly we're getting a request to do turnkey projects where someone will come to us and they want us to do everything in the house.
Literally just do the whole house and they just turn their key and
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe for us to just understand the context, when we talk about a kitchen, what really are we talking about? Are we just talking about the stove, microwave, or what does the kitchen comprise of?
No, we're talking about a lot more than that. The kitchen is, in a modern home, really the soul of the home. It's where you nourish your family from.
That's where food comes from.
That's where food comes from. So that is where the family grows from. So what you'll find now, even if you look at the architectural designs for modern houses, is that there's a lot of emphasis on the kitchen. How big is it, or how small is it? How functional is it? How durable is it? All those things. So what we then do with our kitchens is we're able to look at all the functionalities of the kitchen. So for example, we look at where you'll be cooking. So the hob area, we look at what are the things, the storage areas, what are you storing in the kitchen, and how does that relate to where you're cooking and where you're washing your vegetables and the other things. So you'll find
and how you just put it together. And
how you put it together.
And I'm sure the look also has to, has the finish.
Exactly.
All right, we'll come to that in just a bit, but I want to understand, particularly for somebody who might be thinking of going into business, the idea of Italian kitchens. First of all, what gave birth to it?
So I worked in Europe for a period of time. And before I left for the country, I had been here and had been in the market research space. And so I'd interacted quite a bit with information and data on the construction industry. And I'd seen the growth then, that was taking place. And then I'd also been able to, through that interaction, see the gaps that were there. And so when I was in Europe, one time I was, I was in this fair, and then I came across a company that was doing Spanish German kitchens, and I began to engage with them, and then I saw how this product, I could bring it back home and it could fill this gap that we had here. Because what was happening then is that there was a lot of growth in the construction sector.
Correct.
And then you could see that the consumer trends were beginning to change.
Okay, so how did you go about identifying that gap in the market? Because one of the things you'll find that there are many people who want to do business, but half the time they don't know, they're not sure. First of all, how I can shift the product. Secondly, doing the survey requires a certain way of doing it. How did you go about yours?
So you have to be keen. So, for example, in this market, for about 10, 15 years, there's been a shift in consumer expectation, because what happens is that if you want to buy a house now, someone wants to buy a house now, and someone who wanted to buy a house 10, 15 years ago, the set of options they're facing, or the scenario they're facing is very different. Because now, now you have more options. You have 10 times more options. If you wanted to buy a house today for, about an apartment today for 15, 20 million shillings, the options you have now are, 10, 15, 20 options in terms of the projects available that are ready for you to buy. Whereas 15 years ago, you only had maybe 2 options.
Right.
So what you then quickly realize is that this shift is the driver for this shift is from two fronts. One is developers realize that they have to be able to provide value for the market. Yeah, and so they have to sort of elevate the value offering in terms of the finishes, the quality, the quality guarantees, etc., have to be better than we've had in the past. But also from a consumer end, Kenyans are a lot more traveled. Kenyans are a lot more informed,
exposed,
and a lot more exposed, and so people come in expecting a certain level
of things.
Yes.
So in terms of identifying the actual gap that was there, was it because, as you mentioned, you are interacting with the construction industry, and as a result you realize there's a quality that is lacking or a style that is lacking?
Absolutely.
And how did you zero in and say, I'll do kitchens for starters, or interior design?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was able to sort of see those gaps, just out of from the position. I was at a vantage position where I was able to look at the market and look at it from a data standpoint, and see that this is what was lacking, and this is what the trend was, and these were the forecasts in terms of growth, etc. And then I took that information and I sort of packaged that into a business proposal. So that, for me, was the opportunity. So how can we come in and provide something that will add value to this market? And so that is exactly what we did. Yeah. So we went back and sat down, and we identified a supplier, which also was a process, because you have to sort of find the right supplier with the right product. So like the brand that you carry, the Italian brand that you carry is called Aran, which is a top 5 kitchen brands in Italy. And you have to get a supplier who has the right level of flexibility, who will also be able to plug into your business. Will be able to give you flexible payment terms,
Right.
and all those things. Give you the right, help you to build your capacity as a business, so that you're able to offer to the market that which you promise, from a quality standpoint and the other things. So once we identify that supplier, then we just came to the market and we started
supplying. All right. So in your opinion and your experience,
Yeah.
what is the one thing or the key things that one needs before you get into a business? I've talked to different people, and some feel it's capital, others feel it's an idea, others feel it's a network. From your experience, what would you say is the key thing that one needs for them to actually get into business?
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, it's important for a business to be profitable, but you don't come into entrepreneurship with that being your first objective. I think what you need to do is to come in and figure out what gap can you plug, what is the gap, what value can you bring that can solve a problem, because that is exactly what we tried to do, what we did, and what we continue to do. So first, find a problem. Where is the gap? And when you find that, if you're able to figure that out, then that is your opportunity. And then how can you best
Put it into action.
plug that gap in a way that is, is better than what the competition is doing. So you need to come in with a quality offering and a value offering that is better in terms of the quality offering. It also needs to be cost effective. So if you can create a good balance of all those factors, then money follows. So. When we started, we didn't start with a lot of money. We sort of just started.
How did you raise your capital? Because I think majority of the people feel that, and maybe sitting on the fence thinking, I really would like to do this. I have a passion to answer this question or to solve this problem. But when you think of maybe the capital that you require to get into it, sometimes it can be discouraging.
Yeah, I mean, like the industry such as ours is very capital intensive, and that can be a barrier. But I think the approach you took was, can we start from ground up and start with providing a solution? And then hopefully if there's uptake from the market of this solution, we can make some money over time, and then maybe plow some of that money back into the business. Yeah. So that is exactly what he did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Advice to somebody who may not have the capital, what areas would you think they can take advantage of or leverage on? You mentioned that your business is capital intensive.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know for any business to run, particularly when it's capital intensive, one of the things that you require is a friendly credit facility from maybe either your supplier or from your bank. What advice would you give to somebody who maybe doesn't have money in their pocket, but possibly there are other areas they can utilize to, get that capital?
So, like in the interior design space, for instance, now we get a lot of because now we have a showroom and we have, a facility and all these things. So we still work with a lot of designers who come to us and say, look, what I do is I offer the service. I may not have the money to set up a facility, fully fledged, but I offer my services to my clients. So what I can do is I can, send some of those clients to you, and then, so the clients will be paying them, but from that business they also get a commission from us.
Get a commission.
Yeah. So if you can start somewhere. Then over time you build your portfolio and you build your capital base, and then maybe eventually you can decide what specific thing you want to go into within the design space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now they say four out of every 5 businesses is likely to shut down after starting.
Yeah.
What has been your secret to ensure that you've not been the 4?
Great consistency. You really have to deliver to the market what you promise. Over time, you begin to build a name, and that is what carries you through the first 5-7 years, which are the most difficult. Our business is still largely based on referral, quite frankly, because someone will be happy with what we do, and then they'll send
refer
us.
somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, even if we do traditional advertising, people who come to us will entrust us with X amount of money because they have faith that we'll be able to deliver. And also, design is still an emerging industry in this market. We're just getting to a stage where now we're being embraced as a sector, and it's because of the factors that I alluded to earlier. And so for that reason, you still have to sort of prove yourself. And how you do that is just by ensuring that
building trust over time.
Exactly. Yeah.
I happen to, have visited a few friends, and sometimes I'm, involved in a bit of construction. And one of the areas I find very unfortunate locally is our finish.
Yeah.
How have you ensured that you have overcome that barrier? Because I would like to imagine that despite the fact that you import the material, you use local fundis.
Well, we train our fundis, so there's a lot of capacity building that we do. We have sometimes our teams from Italy, because half of our work really is, so half of what we do is here, then half of it is done in Italy. So, a lot of the production is done in Italy, so we have to ship these items in. So we have teams from Italy come in periodically, every so often, maybe once a quarter to train and ensure that, because also there's innovations happening every other day. Our products are subjected to a lot of research and development before they're put out in the market, just to ensure that the engineering is right, the ergonomic, in terms of, you're not breaking your shoulder trying to reach out for something in the cabinets, everything is exactly what it's supposed to be. Yeah. So all those, there's something new every day, and so we get people coming in to train our fundis and to ensure that even by the time we're getting these items out here, by the time we're going to site with them, the installation is done right. You don't have any, mistakes, or you don't have any, damages with the stuff.
So why Italy? Why don't you train your fundis, or have them, even if it's go through a training, then use local material for the benefit of building the economy, but secondly, by virtue of the fact that I'm sure it would bring the prices down.
It's something we're working towards, but quite frankly, it's so for us to be able to achieve some of the finishes that we have, would have to invest in very expensive production machinery. Yeah. So because we don't have those types of equipment here yet.
Could that be an opportunity? Because now, if you did, then you'd be the sole person to do it.
So that's why I told you it's something we're working towards. Because at the end of the day, I think for us, it's about making good interiors accessible to anyone who
would like to have that quality.
Them. Yeah, and not just making these things a preserve of very high-end projects.
Okay. Yeah. Now you've talked about training and you've talked about people coming from Italy, and I'm asking this for the benefit of somebody who may be thinking of running a similar business where you have to train people, but it has a challenge, and the challenge here is once you've trained these artisans and fundis, are you bound by a contract to them? Because with time they could decide either because their quality or for whatever reason they could move on to other things. How do you ensure that you keep that flow?
Well, for us, it's also about, it's not just about training, fundis and, binding them to us so that they have to work for us. It's about empowering these guys. So, because it's important. So whether they work for us or they eventually take that skill elsewhere,
that's up to them.
Yeah, it's about the bigger goal, which is to try and elevate our spaces, yeah, and so a lot of them stay with us because we will train them and then we'll usually give them employment, but sometimes we'll find one or two people who then move on to the next employer, and that is still okay because for them there could be growth. If they feel like they've had enough experience here and it's time for them to explore an opportunity elsewhere, then it's still okay.
That's still okay.
It just means we've done a good job enough for
You've
someone
empowered
else.
them. Now they feel they can fly.
Exactly.
Okay, now maybe to another area that you possibly could advise to SMEs particularly, and it's how to survive harsh economic times. Right now in Kenya we are facing, I think, the hardest time we've had in a long time economically.
Yeah.
How do you stay afloat, especially given that your product is very high end?
Yeah. What I've seen is a lot of the business coming to us now is coming from people who want to deal with this difficult time we're going through, but in a different way. So developers will come to us because they want to sell. So if you want to sell, you want to offer value. So we help them do that. For our retail market, what we call our retail market, which is the homes, private homes, they'll come to us because they don't want to start doing the repairs in 6 months or in a year because they used, things that are not up to par. So, so I think everyone is trying to sort of cushion themselves, but in a different way. For developers, that makes a good business case for them. So that is commercial developers. For homeowners, it's still a good business case because then they're able to save on repairs and things like those. But for us, what I think the principle that we stick to is just deliver. Do a good job. Yeah.
All right. And what would you say are the key elements for a successful business to run? We have very many people. In Kenya, they say that everybody who's working probably has a side hustle. But not all of those side hustles, of course, succeed. What have been your secrets to a successful business that sees growth? Because success may not necessarily mean that you have huge profits at the beginning, but the fact that there is sustainability, there is growth, that could be a path to success. What has been your key?
Well, business is a very complex journey. You have to have the grit. Like you have to be very tenacious.
Resilience.
And resilient, very resilient. You need to, what I usually call staying power. Yeah, and because it's not going to be an easy journey. In fact, most of it won't be an easy journey. And the bigger it grows, the more complex the problems become. So you're balancing a lot more balls. Yeah, the burden of responsibility on your shoulders is a lot bigger because you have a lot more employees to worry about the salaries, and you probably have a bigger space to pay for,
Rent and all that.
yeah, and all those things. So what for me I've done from the beginning is one of the things I did is to just basically, as much as possible, employ the services of professionals. We did a first strategic plan, I think, in year 2 of business, which was quite early. I was the only employee then, and I was working with 2 consultants. And we sat in my living room and did the plan. And that then became the roadmap that we used for the next 5 years of our journey. And then now we're just about to do another one. So we had a gap of about 2 years, so we didn't have one. So no such thing. So paying attention to the details in a way that takes care. So in a way that you sort of hedge against some of the risks. It helps you to hedge against some of the risks that you might otherwise not even have known until
you're moving.
Yeah.
All right, we'll soon need to wind up. Yeah. And what inspires you? What keeps you going? I'm sure running a business is not easy. Like you've mentioned, sometimes you have employees who you don't want to share that you're not even sure whether they're going to get paid at the end of the month. There are days where you're having sleepless nights because the landlord is about to come knocking. Yeah. How do you get inspired, and what keeps you going?
Well, you need to have a good support system. So I'm surrounded by a small group of people that I draw a lot of support from, and inspiration. And then I have my things that I run to, the places I escape to, or things that I escape to, for me to just recharge. So, for example, I'm a guy of very deep faith, so that's very important to me. I collect art, so whenever I feel like my mind is in a state of confusion, I'll run to a gallery or something, and just go and immerse myself in that for an evening. And so you need to find something that you go to, because you'll need it. Something that you go to that will help you to recharge and just to get your balance back.
Okay. Yeah. All right. As we wind up, maybe somebody who might be interested in possibly the kind of business you do, your location where you're found.
So we are in Western Heights, in Westlands, on 2nd floor. So that's where the showroom is. They can also send us an email on info@italiankitchens.co.ke. Then I can be reached on 0720 247815.